In this video, I'll show you how I built this custom vanity. The first step in building the new cabinet was to cut out all the parts for the cabinet box. I know that seemed like a lot of thin strips for the cabinet box, but rather than putting a full back on the cabinet and having it cut out for all of the plumbing, I decided to use stretchers and keep the back of the cabinet open. I was able to get all the parts out of a single sheet of pre-finished plywood. I prefer pre-finished plywood, even though it's a bit more expensive. It'll save you time, looks more professional, and the finish is very durable. To build the main cabinet, I decided to use pocket hole screws. Since this vanity will sit between two walls, you won't be able to see other sides, so the pocket hole screws won't be visible. If you prefer not to use pocket hole screws, you could do a simple butt joint and screw straight through, since, as I said, the sides won't be visible. And man, was it a good thing the sides aren't visible. As you can see here, I messed up drilling my pocket holes and I drilled them at the wrong depth. Fortunately, I was able to drill a second set of holes and we're back in business. I decided to use glue and screws to hold this together. The glue is probably a little bit of overkill. You really don't need to use glue. The screws would have been plenty strong enough. But in order for the glue to stick, you have to remove the finish on this pre-finished wood. In order to do that, I just ran the boards upright through my table saw, removing about a 32nd of an inch, just enough to get the finish off and give the glue something to adhere to. Okay, so now that the cabinet box is assembled, it's time to start building out the toe kick. Some people prefer to build this as an integrated piece to the cabinet. I prefer to build it separate. I feel like it gives me an advantage. The main advantage is it's much easier for me to level the toe kick than it is to try and level an entire cabinet box with all the weight and the sides and the bulk. So as you can see here, I'm shimming and reinforcing it. It's less cumbersome, it's easier to work with. And once the toe kick is level, it's easier to just place the cabinet box on top of it and fasten it to the walls. To pretty up the toe kick, I'm going to build a custom front piece to go on it that'll be painted the same color as the cabinet. To do this, you can simply scribe a line by running a pencil along the floor so it follows the contour of the floor. And then, if it's not perfectly straight, I would use a bandsaw to cut it out so it's an exact fit. After that part's done, you can dry fit it and scribe a line along the top and cut to that line so that you have a flush fit. Another advantage is, once this is painted, you can just screw it in from the back to hold it in. So like I said, installing the cabinet box is much easier now with the toe kick. No need to do any leveling. All you have to do is just shim it out to make sure it's square to the walls, trim off the excess shims, and you're done. Now it's time to move on to the face frame. For the face frame materials, you don't need to mill your own lumber like I'm doing here. You can certainly buy pre-milled boards from your lumber yard. Just make sure that you're getting S4S or surfaced on four sides when you buy it. Since this is a custom frame, you want to make sure that you're choosing the boards that are right width for your job. For my frame, I cut the boards 1.5 inches wide by 3/4 inch for the main frame, and then one piece 3 inches by 3/4 inch for the vertical center divider. Once the boards are cut to length, you'll drill pocket holes to do the assembly. To assemble the face frame, start by laying everything out and clamp the pieces that you're going to be driving the screws through. Pocket hole screws have a tendency to want to push the wood apart when you start driving the screws in. By clamping it, it eliminates this issue. For the cabinet doors and upper panel, I cut boards 2 inches by 3/4 inch for the framing and cut panels out of 1/4 inch MDF. For the joinery, I used a tongue and groove router bit set for the rails and the stiles. You don't have to use a router bit to do this. You can accomplish the same thing and make these types of cuts on a table saw. Before doing your glue up, be sure to do a dry fit. Remember, you don't need a ton of glue here. You need just enough to hold it together without it squeezing out. I'll keep this section short since watching sanding and painting is about as much fun as actually doing it. In this case, it took me longer to do the painting than it did to actually build the cabinet, because of the amount of time it took in between coats to dry. I applied 2 coats of primer and 2 coats of cabinet white paint. To install the face frame, I use Titebond quick and thick glue, and I use some pin nails to hold it in place. I love this glue because it doesn't run and doesn't squeeze out as much. The last thing you want to do when you get to this point is mess up drilling for the hinges on the doors. So I used a Craig jig that you can see here to cut out for the cup hinges, and it made easy work of it. Before installing the doors, you might have to put some wood blocks on the inside of the cabinet, depending on the type of hinge you're using, as you can see here. To install the door, I used a Craig mounting jig to hold the door in place while I drilled pilot holes and inserted the screws. If you don't have a tool like this, you could use a block of wood or something else similar. Just clamp it to the bottom of your cabinet to hold the door up while you mount it. To finish it off, I ordered a custom top with integrated sink to fit this opening, and then just installed the faucet and the plumbing underneath, and we're all done. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If so, I'd really appreciate you giving me that thumbs up and subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching.